Ultimate Warrior's popularity in pro wrestling can never be overlooked. Jim Hellwig, at one point, looked like he was about to take over from Hulkamania in the World Wrestling Federation. Fans latched on to the Ultimate Warrior character in the search for something new and exciting within professional wrestling. At times, I do feel that the Ultimate Warrior's biggest enemy was the Ultimate Warrior himself. The man had the world in the palm of his hands, but he would never become the true face of the World Wrestling Federation due to things like suspensions and also the feeling that he was in Hulk Hogan's shadow. Warrior was outspoken. He felt he was worth more than what the World Wrestling Federation was giving him, and this, I feel anyway, was the reason why he never got that ultra push to the top, along with the Hogan money that comes along with it. This isn't to say that Warrior didn't get a monster push, far from it. Ultimate Warrior was booked to defeat the company's top guys, including Hulk Hogan, in a career that was still extremely successful and noteworthy. You can't mention the WWF's glory days without bringing up the Ultimate Warrior, and this is a true testament to his popularity and status within the WWF. The man was adored by his fans. He headlined WrestleMania. He had one of the most energetic and exciting entrances in the history of pro wrestling. He really is deserving of his status as a WWE legend and a Hall of Famer. This video takes a look at the Warrior's first run in the World Wrestling Federation, covering from 1987 to 1992. Jim Hellwig was born in 1959 in Crawfordsville, Indiana. Prior to getting into the world of professional wrestling, Jim was a bodybuilder, having been lifting weights from the age of 11. Hellwig's bodybuilding career was quite successful. However, while he was in California training for an upcoming bodybuilding contest, he was approached about becoming a professional wrestler. Jim was working out in a California gym at the time, a gym owned by Steve Borden, better known as Sting. Sting was also asked if he had any desire in becoming a professional wrestler along with Hellwig. Those of you who watched my video covering Sting's early career would have a fair idea of what happened next, and I do want to keep the focus here on the Ultimate Warrior in the WWF, so I'll keep things as brief as possible. Hellwig and Steve Borden became a tag team, finding work initially in the CWA in Memphis, but after moving to the UWF, the team was renamed as the Blade Runners, pretty much a Road Warriors knockoff tag team. In 1986, Jim Hellwig decided to leave the UWF and Bill Watts, and he made his debut in the Dallas-based World Class Championship Wrestling, home of the Von Erich family. Jim debuted as the Dingo Warrior, and he said he took the name Warrior due to his peers saying he looked like a warrior, while Road Warrior Animal said that Jim Hellwig was trying to rip off the Road Warriors by using the name. The first match we have recorded for Jim Hellwig in the WWF was on the 17th of June 1987, a house show in Texas where the Dingo Warrior was successful in defeating Steve Lombardi. The first televised match we have was back in August 15th, 1987, with a win over Barry Horowitz. For Warrior's first 4 months here, he mainly worked against the same guys, a mix of Jose Estrada, Horowitz and Lombardi, and he continued to use the name Dingo Warrior during these first lot of months. WWE producer Bruce Pritchard said on his podcast that Hellwig's name was changed due to Vince McMahon not knowing what a Dingo Warrior was supposed to be, and along with this, there was also the modern day Warrior Kerry Von Erich and the Road Warriors already using the Warrior name. Vince McMahon said that Jim Hellwig should be the Ultimate Warrior, the warrior who would stand above all the others, the one and only true warrior in wrestling. With the change in name came a change in persona, as the Ultimate Warrior became quickly known for his ring entrances as much as he did for his time in the ring, maybe even more so. With the famous Ultimate Warrior theme music playing in the arena, Jim Hellwig would run out to the ring looking like he had way too much caffeine, or maybe something else, who knows, but he would run to the ring, pump up the crowd, shake the ring ropes like he was trying to rip them out of the turnbuckles, and all this while the crowd was going totally wild. The Dingo Warrior wore face paint, but when Hellwig became the Ultimate Warrior, the face paint became more colourful, along with his promos. The Ultimate Warrior, I feel, was not an idea that came out of creative meetings or out of a boardroom. This character could only come out of the man portraying the gimmick. Whatever you may feel about Warrior's promos as time went on, it was Jim Hellwig who made this all come to life, and he deserves credit for it. It's easy to look back and laugh at some of the outlandish comments that Warrior would make, but it was extremely effective back in the late 80s and early 90s. It got over, it was insanely popular. But anyway, we're getting slightly ahead of ourselves here. The Ultimate Warrior went on a path of destroying enhancement guys before getting his first real WWF feud. Hercules vs. the Warrior started life as a series of house show matches in January of 1988, but the matchup also made its way to TV screens, and eventually the two squared off at WrestleMania. Before this, Ultimate Warrior and Hercules had a tug of war contest using a steel chain, and when Warrior tugged on the chain, it snapped. This led to the WrestleMania 4 match, which saw Hellwig emerge victorious in his Mania debut. The match was slotted in the middle of the card. It was pretty short, it wasn't a wrestling masterclass by any means, but Warrior's popularity is visible for all to see in this match, if nothing else. Warrior would then feud with Bobby Heenan and the Heenan family in the months that followed. SummerSlam 1988 was an important night when we look back at Warrior's career. The Honky Tonk Man had been IC champion for a very long time, going into SummerSlam with a 454-day reign. Brutus Beefcake was scheduled to work against the Honky Tonk Man at SummerSlam, but an injury took him out of the match, and we didn't know who would be his replacement. When Warrior's music hits inside Madison Square Garden, the place goes nuts. Warrior squashed the Honky Tonk Man in under 30 seconds, and watching this back made me think of the genuine outrage that this would cause with today's modern fans if a 454-day title reign was ended in mere seconds, but it was definitely effective back here in SummerSlam 88. Warrior's high energy throughout the match and the crowd's reaction was enough to give you goosebumps. The Warrior's next big feud in the WWF would be one of his best. Ravishing Rick Rude and the Ultimate Warrior met in the ring at Royal Rumble 1989 in a Super Posedown challenge. What is a Super Posedown, I hear you ask? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. Two dudes posing in the ring, and the winner being decided by the fans in attendance. When it seemed like Warrior was about to get the win, the Ravishing One attacked him, leading to a Rick Rude vs Ultimate Warrior IC title match at WrestleMania 5. This one is worth watching just to see how hard Rick Rude worked to make Warrior look like an unstoppable monster. He bounced all over the ring for Warrior during this match. Anyway, Rude got the win and picked up the IC title here after Bobby Heenan held Warrior's legs during a pinfall attempt. At SummerSlam 89, Warrior got a rematch for the Intercontinental title and he defeated Rick Rude in a match that I feel was miles better than their WrestleMania showdown a few months prior. Warrior then began feuding with Andre the Giant in the house show loop, picking up quick wins against Andre that helped solidify him as a main event player. The fans were really behind Jim Hellwig. His popularity was going through the roof along with his merchandise sales, and the WWF noticed. Hulk Hogan had been the WWF's big main player for years, and it was decided that Ultimate Warrior should be given a chance to shine in the main event spot. The seeds were planted at the 1990 Royal Rumble when Hulk Hogan inadvertently eliminated Warrior from the Rumble match. Hogan was the WWF champion during this Royal Rumble win, by the way. The WrestleMania main event had not been given as a reward during this time period. Anyway, after the Rumble, Warrior vs Hogan was penciled in for WrestleMania 6 to be held in the Toronto Skydome on April 1st, 1990. Both men agreed to put their titles on the line for this epic encounter that was billed as the Ultimate Challenge. WrestleMania 6 main event really did feel like a passing of the torch, a real moment in the history of professional wrestling that should never be overlooked. Considering the in-ring limitations of both men, Hulk Hogan vs the Ultimate Warrior was a good match, made even better by the heightened emotions of the audience. Some fans were not prepared to see Hogan lose the Warrior, while others were clamouring for the Ultimate Warrior to become the next big thing in the World Wrestling Federation. Babyface versus babyface matches on this scale were uncommon in the WWF during this time period, so there was definitely a feeling of excitement and unpredictability surrounding the Ultimate Challenge. Hats off to both men here. Whatever you may think of Warrior and Hogan, they created a moment here that will never be forgotten. Warrior picked up the win, making him the first man to simultaneously hold the Intercontinental and WWF titles. The sad thing is, it's really hard to imagine the WWE creating moments like this ever again. The Warrior's title reign lasted all the way until January 91, and some see his time as the WWF Champion as a flop. He defended the title against the likes of Mr. Perfect and Ted DiBiase in his initial months as champion, and he reignited his feud with Ravishing Rick Rude by having a very entertaining steel cage match at SummerSlam 1990. At Survivor Series, he teamed with the modern day Warrior Kerry Von Erich, now known as the Texas Tornado, in the Legion of Doom to defeat Mr. Perfect and Demolition, another good match. I don't necessarily see this run as a flop. The crowd was still very much into the Ultimate Warrior, but I do agree that he could have been given more meaningful feuds and matches. The Rick Rude match at SummerSlam was good, but we had seen it before. It just felt like the opposition being put in front of the Ultimate Warrior didn't seem like serious threats. Despite Warrior getting equal billing and closing the show out at SummerSlam 1990, making quick work of Rick Rude in this steel cage match, it was clear that there was a greater buzz for Hulk Hogan's return here against the undefeated Earthquake. The show drew almost as well as WrestleMania 6 on pay-per-view, but it can be easily argued that people were paying here to see the return of Hulk Hogan and not so much the Ultimate Warrior. By the time 1991 rolled in, the WWF was hell-bent on creating the heel Sergeant Slaughter character to capitalise on real-world issues at the time, and Hogan vs Slaughter for the WWF title was the match that the World Wrestling Federation wanted at WrestleMania. Slaughter defeated Warrior at the 1991 Royal Rumble with the help of Macho Man Randy Savage. Sensational Sherry had been trying to get Warrior to defend his title against Savage in the weeks leading up to the Rumble, and when this didn't happen, we all should have really known that Warrior was dropping the title here at the Rumble. Slaughter would work with Hogan at WrestleMania 7, while Warrior would work with Savage in a career-ending match. The loser of this match would be forced into retirement. The Savage vs Warrior match at WrestleMania 7 was really good too. Again, this is with the Warrior's in-ring limitations being taken into consideration. You have to remember that Randy Savage was a man who liked to lay out his matches move for move in great detail before hitting the ring to perform. This helped Warrior immensely, with Savage's meticulous planning leading to a more fleshed out Warrior match. Savage was also the perfect opponent for the Ultimate Warrior. He seemed like the only man who could match Warrior when it came to intensity. With the career stipulation, it did feel like there was a lot on the line here. No one really wanted to see either man retire, but in the end it became more of a Randy Savage moment than an Ultimate Warrior moment. This isn't a bad thing at all. This was the design of the outcome after all, with Miss Elizabeth reuniting with Savage after Warrior got the win. It speaks highly of the smart booking of this match. What was supposed to be a dark outcome for Randy Savage turned out to be one of the biggest feel-good moments in WrestleMania history, and it should be noted that Warrior had found himself involved in huge back-to-back WrestleMania moments. As 1991 went on, the relationship between the WWF and Jim Hellwig became very unstable. Leading up to SummerSlam, Warrior was involved in a feud with The Undertaker. After The Undertaker had locked Warrior in a coffin during a funeral parlour segment on TV, Jake Roberts decided he would help the Warrior in overcoming The Undertaker by putting him through 3 tests. It was all a bit comical, to be honest, with the final test resulting in Warrior getting bitten by a cobra, along with Roberts revealing he had been working alongside The Undertaker all along. This was all done to set the stage for Jake Roberts versus The Ultimate Warrior, but it never happened due to an alleged pay dispute. Ultimate Warrior sent Vince McMahon a letter in July of 1991 requesting a pay increase for his WrestleMania 7 performance with Randy Savage. He wanted over $500,000, stating that the Ultimate Warrior match meant more than the Hogan match at Mania 7, and therefore he should be paid accordingly. Jim Hellwig also stated that he wanted a higher percentage of his merchandise sales, travel accommodations, and a lighter work schedule. Vince McMahon agreed. He paid Hellwig the asking fee, gave him higher royalties, and got the Warrior back in the WWF. Keep in mind that the Warrior had been scheduled to appear at SummerSlam 1991, teaming with Hulk Hogan in the main event, so Vince felt his hands were tied. He didn't want to let down the paying audience in attendance, nor the pay-per-view audience watching at home. Jim worked the SummerSlam match. In his mind, he had gotten one over on the WWF, and all was well. After the SummerSlam match, Jim Hellwig was given a letter from Vince McMahon stating that he was now suspended. The letter confirmed that Vince McMahon had only agreed previously to Warrior's demands so that Warrior would perform at SummerSlam as advertised. And now, after SummerSlam, Vince didn't want anything to do with Hellwig. Warrior refused the suspension and instead left the WWF, trying to totally resign from the company, but this was refused. Warrior's contract didn't officially expire until September of '92. Vince and the Warrior were able to make amends, mainly due to Hulk Hogan announcing he was about to leave the company, and so Vince needed a big name to keep audiences coming to shows. Warrior came back at WrestleMania 8 to save Hogan from a post-match beatdown from Sid Justice and Papa Shango, and thus it seemed everything was alright with the world. Warrior was put into a feud with Papa Shango, which was questionable to say the least. Warrior himself said that he did not like the creative ideas pitched during this feud, but he went along with it anyway. I've covered this feud already in my Papa Shango video, but in short, the segments were filled with supernatural shenanigans which really haven't aged that well. After the Shango feud, Warrior got a WWF title match against Randy Savage at SummerSlam '92. I remember hearing the stories back then that this wasn't the real Ultimate Warrior and they used someone else to portray the character during this match. This of course makes for great clickbait videos and articles today, but even back then, it's fairly obvious that this is Jim Hellwig. There's nothing here to make you think otherwise. Anyway, Warrior won the match, but it was via countout. Survivor Series in 1992 was originally scheduled to include a match pitting Warrior and Savage against Ric Flair and Razor Ramon. However, Warrior was released just weeks before this event, with many believing it was due to wellness violations and the fact that the authorities were coming down heavy on Vince McMahon and the WWF around this time. This was the end of Warrior's run in the WWF throughout the late 80s and early 90s. I've covered Warrior's return in 1996 in another video, and I'd suggest checking that out if you want to continue on looking at the career of Jim Hellwig. Of course, in the future, we will look at the Ultimate Warrior in WCW, but this is where we end things for now.